Hey, welcome. Happy International Women's Day. My name is Chantal, and I am the founder of Sister Shack. And I'm just so excited to be here tonight. I actually can't believe I'm getting to do this. And I can't believe this is my job. I'm so excited to be here with you all. And today I have four amazing guests. So, yeah, I just want to just say thank you to everyone who has supported Sister Shack for the last 2 years. It's been a real honor to meet so many women and non-binary people who have just really supported us and have believed in what we do. And some days when I'm just thinking, what am I doing with my life? What's happening? I remember that Sister Shack is here and is still going. So I'm just really, really thankful to all the supporters and just everyone who has taken part, everyone who has come along to our events. And I just can't wait to be back with our live events again. So I'm not going to waffle on for too long because really, we came here to listen to four amazing women. So today I'm going to be speaking to Bria Quinn and Ona Quinn from Bratakus. We've got Estella Adeyari from Big Joanie and Allison Wolfe, the infamous Allison Wolfe, who was a pioneer of Riot Girls. So yeah, what else can I say apart from let's go? Hi, everyone.
Hey.
So nice to see everyone.
Hi.
Unfortunately, we can't have Bratakus on screen today, just voices because of their signal. We'll explain a bit more about that later, but they're in a very rural part of Scotland with not a great signal, so we'll just have to have the voices today. But I'm just so glad that they're here. So Estella, could you start just by introducing yourself? Oh, nope. Okay, we'll go to Allison and then we'll come back to Estella.
Mute myself. Okay, yeah. Hi. Okay, I'm Allison Wolfe, and I live in Los Angeles. And I guess I grew up in Olympia, Washington. I was fortunate to be raised in a really liberal household, at least when I was with my mom, which is the school year and stuff. And she was like a lesbian feminist, started the first women's clinic in Olympia and stuff like that. So we had, those conversations were happening really early on in our house. But still, I believe that each person has to kind of find their own way and their own style, of being active and activists and stuff. I ended up starting a band with my friends Molly Newman and also Aaron Smith, Bratmobile, and also a fanzine with Molly Newman, Girl Germs. And we were part of Riot Girl, really inspired and in conjunction with Bikini Kill. And I don't know, I've been in a lot of bands and stuff like that. And I was in Washington, D.C. for a long time. And I went back to school not too long ago at USC and to journalism school. And so, because I started thinking about how I really feel like we should be telling our own stories, and I wanted to kind of have the skills to do that. So now I do kind of podcast and freelance radio stuff here and there, and sometimes sing in bands, DJ, speaking.
All round Wonder Woman. And Estella, you're back. Could you just introduce yourself?
Hi. Yeah, sorry, my Wi-Fi chose a really inopportune moment to drop out, but I'm Estella Adeyari. As Chantal said, I play bass in Big Joanie, and I also play lead guitar in Trumpet. I've played in quite a few DIY bands in my time. Probably not quite as many as Allison yet, but there's still time. And I also volunteer with a couple of organisations like Girls Rock London, which seeks to empower, like young girls, non-binary youth, and also trans youth when it comes to music making. And I'm part of the volunteer team of Decolonise Fest, which is a festival that was started for punks of colour by punks of colour. So yeah, happy International Women's Day.
Thank you, and happy International Women's Day to us all. Bratakus, are you there?
Hello, yes, we are.
Hey, hi. Could you introduce yourself, both of you?
Yeah, I'm Bria. I'm Ona. Yeah, and we play in Bratakus, which is possibly the only hardcore feminist punk band in Murray.
Yeah,
probably in this part that we know of. Yeah, in this part of Scotland. And we also volunteer at Girls Rock Glasgow, which is similar to what Estella was saying, but only in Glasgow, teaching young girls music and feminism and all those great things.
Okay, thanks very much. Yeah, I want to ask you all some more about your some questions about the sort of style of music that you play a little bit later. I just want to let everyone know out there if there's any questions that you'd like to ask. If you just drop them in on the Facebook page on the stream, and Steve, who is doing our tech today, will pick them up and let me know, and I will ask the question to the panel. So yeah, I want to ask you first of all, Estella. How would you describe your music style to everyone who hasn't heard it before, or even if they have, how do you describe it?
I guess there's quite a few different influences going on if you listen to Big Joanie. So I'd say we usually draw from everything from like 60s girl groups to like riot girl bands, to that kind of like post-punk of like the 80s and stuff, and then also 90s R&B girl bands. So it's quite a melting pot of sounds, I think. But between the three of us, I guess we all have this shared kind of love of like punk music and alternative music in general. So we all kind of like, all of our influences do fit quite well together, even though we might be drawing from different pools of experience at band practice and stuff. So yeah, it's quite a long-winded explanation of what we sound like.
No, it's great, and I think you've got that No Scrubs cover that I think that people really like, and I love 90s R&B. That is my absolute era. And yeah, it's really nice to hear that you have that kind of influence as well, because I think that it's nice to sort of cross those genres, especially with like punk music or that style of music. It can be 90s R&B was the kind of non-shouty version of like feminist music, I think, in some ways. Allison as well, you've been in so many different bands, and yeah, you were a definite like pioneer of riot girl. What would you class your style as? It's probably, I remember seeing you years ago in when I lived in the Netherlands with Party Line, and watching you doing your stretches and your shorts, and it was just so much fun. Yeah, so I know you probably have a list of different styles that you can talk about.
Yeah, Party Line was a fun band, probably the funnest band I've been at. Like, we'd go crazy on tour. It's pretty fun. I don't know, like style wise, like, so I sing in bands. I don't really know how to play instruments. I played clarinet in middle school and bass clarinet in high school, actually, but I forgot about all that. I think what was important for me when we started music was that just the super DIY aspect. I was lucky to grow up in Olympia, where with K Records and everything, that was like a thing, and to be supported by people who believed in that. Because when we started, we didn't know how. Like, I'm not going to say this about Erin, because she was already like a guitarist who had taken guitar lessons, but Molly and I didn't. We were self-taught, right? Like, we didn't know how to play instruments and things like that before we started. And so my whole thing is just like, take the tools that you have available to you to have a voice and represent yourself. And if you have something to say, then you can say it. And it doesn't have to be professional. You can create your own style really out of that. And usually it's more interesting anyways. So, and of course I had influences like the Slits and the Raincoats, people who had a really different sound, and just kind of made it all their own and made it awesome and cool on their own. Yeah, I don't know. But I also want to say one thing. When I first saw Big Joanie, we played together. It was really great. And I remember thinking that you were art rock, like super avant-garde and everything. And I was just blown away. And it was definitely for me something more sophisticated that I felt like I knew how to do. But then I thought about it and it was like, but it's still also a DIY kind of art rock and avant-garde and whatever. So anyways.
No, I love that. Some art rock. And I think, I'm a big fan of like arts activism. And I think, in any form. And yeah, there's that kind of style of music is definitely that. So all those styles of music are real activism. And yeah, I think, with Bratakus, I've never seen them live. They nearly came to play live in Newcastle where I am, but unfortunately because of COVID we had to cancel it. But I remember seeing them live on TV, and just being like, whoa, like blown away. So Bratakus, could you kind of like talk about your style? No, so I keep giving you the collective name of Bratakus, but Bria and Ona, could you come in and sort of talk about your style?
It's totally fine to call us Bratakus, by the way. We're kind of a collective unit by now. I would say we definitely are super inspired, obviously, by the Riot Girl scene, but also a lot by hardcore music. So we kind of try and mix kind of like Riot Girl feminist punk and hardcore punk, and we really like screaming and shouting and just making a racket, really. So I would say that is kind of the best way to describe. And then also, like, I think the drum machine adds a certain sound to our music as well. Yeah, and then like from a young age we kind of took influences from bands like the Distillers and Bikini Kill and Bratmobile, obviously, and also bands like Minor Threat and the Dead Kennedys, so they are all kind of in there.
Yeah, I can totally hear those influences. It reminds me of like going to things like Reading Festival when I was a kid and a teenager, and hearing those like really loud like rock punk bands, and you can definitely hear it with your influence. It's probably out of the four people, definitely the most shouty, real like hardcore, like that screamy sound, which I really like love to hear and get all of my aggression out. And seeing you both do it, I find it amazing to see. And when I think I saw you on TV, and that's how I kind of came across and was like, whoa, who are these people? Like, I need to find them. And,
yes, thank you so much.
Yeah,
thank you.
I think it was the Girls Rock School documentary that came out.
Oh yeah, Hidden Lives.
Yeah. Pardon?
Hidden Lives, I think it was called.
I can't remember what it was called, but yeah, it was. I don't know if anybody's seen that, and if you haven't seen it, you need to watch it. It might be on iPlayer, but it was a really cool documentary, and seeing you both just like shouting and screaming, I was like, yes, gotta find you. And Estella, I want to ask you this. It's okay. How do you find navigating the music industry as a woman, especially as a woman of color?
Yeah, like I guess it's interesting looking at like the music industry TM and the kind of where I came from with making music. So I guess so I started off in like more kind of DIY music communities. I did tend to be like playing venues or performing with people who were interested in trying to build an inclusive scene. So even though like there were obviously, I think we knew, and part of the reason why something like Decolonise Fest exists, for example, is to try and address like things that hadn't been really being addressed in the punk scene, like the big issue of race, essentially. And so a lot of Decolonise Fest is about trying to decolonise the punk scene and make it clear that Black people and people of colour have obviously been a part of this scene for a long time and should expect to be represented at those kind of events as well. So, but yeah, I guess like there's a noticeable distinction between being in a scene that's willing to have those conversations and then entering like the sphere of the industry and seeing how little progress has been made in many ways. So yeah, it felt like almost a little jarring having, you know, quite a celebratory day like today and seeing like industry places like tweeting about it and whatever, when I think the industry definitely has a long way to go, and I don't think it's necessarily that welcoming to women of color, if I'm honest. So yeah.
No, I would agree. I would definitely agree. I DJ, but I don't play music, do gigs, but I know that even as a woman of color who DJs and also a woman of color that makes audio, and audio in the sense of like documentaries, I am one of very few people that do that in the Northeast that I know of as a woman of color.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't feel very welcoming. Like if I DJ in places, I don't feel very welcome sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you see the lip service that music industry does, but actually what are they doing behind? They're not doing a lot for women, let alone color and non-binary people of color. And I spoke to Allison about this, actually. I did an interview, which I haven't released yet, with Allison. And I want to ask you that, Allison, as well. You know, you've navigated the music industry as a woman for a long time. But also, you know, we discussed about the Riot Girl movement, and did it leave women of color behind? And I think, you know, we discussed that, and I know that you kind of had a different view on that to maybe that I even do, or some people. But I suppose when you're in it, it's hard to see it maybe from the outside. But what do you think about dating it as a person, you know, woman, and then as a woman of color? You know, how do you feel?
Right.
You're not a woman of color, but you know what I mean. You know, what did you see when you were doing that?
Well, I think that's the main point, like what you said, like I'm not a woman of color. So in some ways, like my opinion about this doesn't matter, because it's like how did women of color feel, you know, like by this. And so that's what matters when we're talking about this subject. Um I I think that it of course, Riot Girl fell short. And I mean, I don't want to say it was all white women and all middle class women, things like that, but because I say that just because I don't want to ignore or alienate the people who don't fit into that category or box, you know. But at the same time, it was predominantly so, especially predominantly white versus the class thing. But I think, you know, it's like, of course, so many ways that Riot Girl fell short. And it's not that issues of like race, class, gender, sexuality, all these things weren't being discussed or, you know, talked about, read about, and everything. But it's just that, like, kind of who started it and who was behind it. And often the group or the sentiments or the messages are reflect who's in the group, right? And what are the main concerns of the people who are in the group based on their lives, you know, and how they grew up and who they are. So yeah, it wasn't enough. And then I also sometimes worry about, even when we tried to you know, be more diverse or inclusive, it's like it can come across tokenistically, you know. And so I also feel for all marginalized people who feel tokenized as well. And which I think, you know, especially I guess we experience a lot in the music industry, but in life in general. So yeah, so I think what's kind of interesting is how people in a more modern times have taken Riot Girl, as far as maybe the name, but maybe not, but even sometimes some of the tenets of Riot Girl, excuse me, and updated it more, you know, to kind of just make it a lot cooler and more progressive and more inclusive and things like that, and intersectional. So
And
I applaud that.
How did you find navigating it as a woman? You know, in the, you know, a few years ago, where it was probably pretty much the same as it is now, really, probably just a little bit more hidden now. But what kind of, you know, thing did you experience? You know, because again, gender is an issue in the music industry, you know, and the spaces that we kind of have to navigate through as women or non-binary people can be really difficult. And I'm just wanted to know, like, how did you find that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely Riot Girl was a reaction to a lot of that stuff. And yeah, I mean, we, of course, as women going like, or just even going to shows in high school and stuff and later, I felt like an observer and not a participant, you know, and I think that that happens to all marginalized people in a lot of spheres. And I think it was a way of just taking what we, like I said, the tools that whatever we knew and could to have a voice. And it takes courage, I think, in the beginning. And it also probably takes like youth and at first, like you're just like, I don't care, the world revolves around me, woo, you know. But it's funny how some things have changed, but then they stay the same. So a lot of times it's like, even though we can have a voice and do all these things now, a lot of people, a lot of women in music and stuff, and there's a lot more representation now. I still feel like not taken seriously a lot of the time, and that a lot of women in music and BIPOC in music and just and LGBTQ people in music, it's like they're just not really taken seriously, and they're often tokenized, and they're often told that there's only room for one of them or one band like that in this lineup or in this festival, you know. And then also their images are taken and you often used to promote the festival or the show or the whatever. Yet they're usually paid less and they're treated more, they're tokenized, you know. But so, and I've found that with a lot of the people I've interviewed for my podcast too, the same story kind of happening over and over again, where they feel tokenized, but also kind of dismissed and not taken as seriously, and definitely not paid as much as like straight white male bands. So
yeah, definitely hear that across the board. Definitely. And Bratakus, I mean, you're in a real rural part of Scotland. So, you know, and there is things to do with like, you know, rural community as well being marginalized and being left out of conversations, less access to things like going to gigs, less thought about, you know, how have you found navigating the music industry, even being in a rural part of Scotland?
Yeah, we've definitely found that like you just have to get used to a lot of driving, because there's no like, we've never really played any gigs like around where we live. It's like going to Glasgow, which is like 3.5, 4 hours drive from us, is like what we have to do basically if we want to play a gig. Yeah, because there's no one really puts any effort into creating a kind of music scene around here. Like if we booked a gig here, I don't really like people. There's just not really a scene. So yeah, you just have to kind of work around that and know that if you're really passionate about playing music and you want to do it, you're just gonna have to find a way that works. Yeah. And yeah, we just make really long, great playlists for the car. Yeah, definitely. Just get used to a lot of driving. Mm-hmm. And I think as well, something to point out is the places that we live around. There's not very many like-minded people, and so say we booked our local pub, everyone there is a gamekeeper and probably a sexist and farmers. It's you know, a lot of the land is used for farming. And yeah, so I think it would maybe be a bit scary to be playing animal rights feminist punk there.
Yeah, that's something really interesting actually that you don't really think about. You know, we can think about it in terms of being like a person of color or, you know, being a woman, but actually just being in a rural part as well, where you have to deal with maybe small-minded people. So, you know, you might be a woman, you know, a white woman who maybe have some levels of privilege, but actually if you're in a space where there are not like-minded people like you know, you can face a lot of problems as well. And I think even being in rural communities, people don't really think about rural communities that much, or think about young people as well. You know, young people in rural communities having to travel. Can you drive? If you can drive, can you afford it? And then you go to these gigs, and being a woman, you'll be underpaid. So you're then doing it for the love, but you still got to pay your bills and, you know, pay your rent and pay for food. So yeah, I think being in a rural part of the world, people don't really think about that at all, or it's kind of like forgotten about. Even when you live in the north, of the northeast of England or the north of England. I think we kind of are quite forgotten about up here. But yeah, I wanted to go on to more about punk music and the sort of themes and activism. And yeah, Stella, I want to ask you about, your activism. You talk about decolonizing. Can you tell us more about the projects that you're part of? And we've mentioned a few times of the things that you're involved in that are outside of Big Joanie. What other things could you explain that a bit more?
Yeah, so I guess I got involved with Girls Rock London. They were hosting like a fundraising event that I was doing the sound for at DIY Space, and I just thought it sounded like such a brilliant initiative and like so necessary for young people as well. So like Girls Rock site, that part of the reason why they target people from marginalised genders of 11 to 16 for the youth camp is because studies have shown is that that's when, for young girls in particular, their self-esteem is at its lowest point. And so a really big part of, I think, the Girls Rock ethos, not just in London, but for all the other branches across the world, I think is actually like kind of intervening in that period and building up self-esteem and, yeah, just empowering young people to go off and start bands if that's what they want to do. Because, yeah, often we don't know how to access that kind of thing, or for example, like Bratakus, if you're not around people who are interested in that or are on your kind of wavelength, it's hard to know like how to get involved in music, or yeah, like how to even, like decide like if you want a bass or a guitar, things like that. And there's just so many steps where you can be put off that trajectory. Like if you go to, back in the before times when we could go places, but if you go to like a guitar center or something and it's full of men like working there who kind of talk down to you because you don't know everything about your instrument, maybe that will put you off. Maybe people telling you that you can't do this certain thing or that drums aren't for you, for example, can put you off. So I think having something like the Girls Rock movement to intervene in all of those obstacles that are quite common for young women in particular to like stumble upon, it's really important. So that's what attracted me to volunteering with them. And yeah, for Decolonize Fest, that was kind of started off the back of like a Facebook post by Steph from Big Joanie, who'd asked if people would be interested in a Black and Brown Punk Festival, and it turned out loads of people were interested. And then they held like the first meeting of the kind of core volunteers who run it behind the scenes. It's probably about a core team of about 10 people now. And yeah, part of that, like I mentioned earlier, was not only like focusing on POC bands that are performing today and like should be getting booked because they're amazing, but also really shining a light on the history of people of color in punk. And yeah, just proving again to, young people of color who were into alternative music that they have every right to kind of be in those spaces, and that, it's not any of the messaging that we might be told either externally or sometimes from within our own communities that that's like white people music or anything like that. Like people of color have always been in the alternative scene, and Sister Rosetta exists. So like it's basically to say like the scene is for us and kind of celebrate ourselves in it as well.
Yeah, I totally, absolutely like relate to that. With even when I was younger, from my own community, I get called like an Oreo because music that I liked was for white people having tattoos, piercings. So it was kind of like from both sides, not the lack of acceptance on both sides. Don't fit in one box, don't fit in another box. Where do you go? And I think probably when we were a bit younger, we didn't have these spaces so much to kind of or visually see people like us, and to know that you're not alone, and actually there are loads of people that look like you who like punk music, like rock music, like tattoos, like piercings, visual representations of us. And I think it's probably why it's so important to have people seeing Black DJs, Black and Brown DJs, women, seeing punk sisters, seeing all of that. And I think even with COVID, the amount of things I've been able to see that I didn't even know exist, all of these panels that I've seen, I'm like, whoa, there are people, even more people that look like me out there. There are loads of women, there are loads of women of color. Like, wow, where have you been? Because I haven't seen you. But it's about having a platform, isn't it? About
exactly. And I think, like Alison mentioned earlier as well, like the importance of like writing our own stories and making sure like the stories of like people of color in punk and women in punk aren't forgotten. And because like I think historically they tended not to be archived as much as like the great men of rock who get like tons of books written about them and stuff, and like put in the Hall of Fame and things like that. So I think girls rock like and Decolonize Fest both for me form a part of like working on both like creating a better space for people in the future and also making sure we don't forget the people who were kind of paving the way of the past, who often don't get written about in like mainstream press, for example.
I totally agree with that, and I think it's something that I'm hoping that when we can kind of have a sense of a bit more normality, whatever that will be, that there'll be some significant changes made, because the cultural sector here, and I'm sure in America as well and in Scotland, has taken a big drop, and it needs to come back, but it needs to come back differently. We need to make some like serious changes for music in the future and all the arts really. And Bratakus, what do you do outside of playing your really hardcore rock music or punk music? What do you get up to, and what other waves are you making?
Well, we both write other kinds of music. Like we're always writing. We're into like loads of different styles of music, not just punk at all. And we're both like are always writing songs in like lots of different genres. So definitely we get up to like a lot of other kind of musical things, but also we're both artists. We do art, both of like actual art, like drawing and painting and things. And just writing other things as well. And we also like to make movies as well. That's another thing that we don't get as much time for these days because we're more music takes up most of our lives, but we used to make a lot of short films, and we're really into film and things like that. And definitely just living where we are, like going out, just walking a lot and seeing is just such a great place that we live for doing that. I just go with my dog.
A lot of foraging.
A lot of walking, and then foraging, researching kind of plants and things like that. We're really interested
We're
in that.
very interested in living sustainably and kind of growing and collecting your own food and things like that.
Maybe we'll see the Bratakus Forager's Guide coming out in the next few
years.
Someone on the Facebook page, James Dodson, says, I think music as a subject is taken more seriously in schools in the UK these days, but I think it's more technical prowess rather than what the extra girls rock deal with. Not quite 100% sure what that means, but I'm sure some of the rock people here would know what that means. But I think, technical prowess, actually, it seems to be like how you can play something and how good you are. So, like Estella was saying, you go into a shop and someone's like, but you're a girl. Can you really play like that? Or, can your nimble delicate fingers really play this guitar or play those drums? Are you sure you want to be playing? You don't just want to play the flute. Surely that's more suitable for you. But it kind of seems to that whole DIY feeling doesn't seem to be something that's really appreciated, I think, as much as maybe it should be. And I think we've got a question from the audience at some point, but I'm just going to ask Alison as well. I know you make a podcast, and I know, Estella, you do a podcast as well, don't you? But Alison, could you tell us a little bit more about the podcast you make or that you were making? And I know about it, but can you tell everyone else?
It's called I'm in the Band, and I named it actually, well, it was after a Bratmobile song, but the idea is that I'm not with the band, I'm not holding my boyfriend's coat or whatever while he's on stage, but it's like just reminding people like, hey, I'm in the band. And I even just the title is like, because how many times I've played shows, and this still happens, where you show up to a venue and they won't let you in, or how you're overly questioned to go backstage because you don't fit what the bouncers think a person in a band is. They don't think it's a woman, you know, and very, it's going to be like, all, I don't know. Anyways, it always happens. And so I just wrote that. It was like, no, I'm in the band. So, anyway, so it's called that. And so the idea was to interview people within the kind of alternative music scene, generally people from bands I like, and who are not, you know, who are marginalized in some way or the other, you know, where they don't necessarily feel or fit the mainstream description of, like, you know, who's usually centered. They're not the centered people usually in music or in other things too. So yeah, it's really been interesting to hear. I just love hearing everyone's stories, but I'm also just kind of trying to help bring those stories to light. And I think that what Estella said was really interesting and true. It's like, it's not that people like women and BIPOC, LGBTQ, all these people, it's not that marginalized people haven't been there all along and haven't been doing all these things all the time. It's just that they're often erased, ignored, all these things in the history making, in the publicity and stuff. And I've talked to Alice Bagg about this a lot too. And she often talks about the early punk scene, let's say. She was someone I interviewed. And she talked about the early punk days in LA. And she was like, it was totally diverse and it was great. We were doing all these things. And but that's not who's remembered or who's written about very often. And so I think it is really important for us to be telling our own stories, or helping tell stories within our communities and stuff, or just stories that you think are important, and helping give voice to people who have been erased, but who inspired you. You know, these are all people who inspired me. And even if they're younger than me, they continue to inspire me. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
that too.
Inspire. Freudian slip? I don't know. Yeah.
I know. I'm on my way out. Just saying.
I found my first gray hair on my head and I was like, what is this?
Yeah, this is like what you do to gray hair, but
I just pulled it out like straight away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Mike on Facebook said that he loves your podcast.
Oh, thank you.
So
Me
yeah.
too.
Well, I'm in the rules rather, but I'm sure that means he loves it. But yeah, it's really awesome, and that's why I wanted to speak to you when I did the interview with you after hearing, you know, I'm in the band. It was like, people need to hear this more. Definitely, we need some more. We need more.
I know. Well, I did the 2 special episodes for about the DJs in DC for the Smithsonian, and that was actually really well. I'll talk about it. I loved it. Those are my favorite. But you're right. I need to do more. I'm working on it slowly.
I think podcasting is a really good progression from, you know, if you're a musician. I think it's, you know, you kind of know, you have that sort of sound, lyrical feeling already. And I think bringing that to a podcast is a really creative way to kind of like move on, especially if you know you haven't got any gigs going on, or if there's things you really want to talk about. It's just another form of activism, really, isn't it? Like discussing things and getting out there and getting on a platform. And yeah, I love making podcasts. Just want to make more and more. I've got a question that came up from someone on Facebook as well. I think it was whose name it was. It was James. So he's asked, how did you find music and the arts was regarded during your schooling? Or Bratakus, the absence of schooling, ? So I'll go to Bratakus first. If you heard it.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Well, yeah, we were home educated, as James has pointed out. So we had music and art were really encouraged, and how we were encouraged to spend a lot of our day when we were children. So it was like our dad doesn't play any instruments, but both our parents have been involved in the punk scene from a really young age, and our dad in bands. So he always kind of, like he had loads of friends that would show me how to play guitar, and then I would teach Ona stuff on the bass, and we've kind of always been around music with our dad, practicing in our dining room when we were children and stuff. So
yeah, and growing up listening to a lot of different
types of music, listening to a lot of female-led music, definitely, which I think in a way
the world
kind of inspired us and kind of made us think, like, when we were starting a band, we'd been so used to hearing women play music, and that was such a kind of normal thing in our house that it wasn't like I never had a thing in my head where I was like, oh, I can't be in a band because I'm a girl or something. Like, it was just encouraged in our house, like,
and because
completely normalized.
Our parents knew so many women who were in music. It wasn't until we started to be part of the scene we noticed the
inequality, kind of, or like, I mean, we were aware of it. It's not like we didn't know, but it was never a thing definitely in my head where I was like, oh, I can't do it because I'm a woman, or I haven't seen women doing it or something, because it was always around me.
We grew up in a little bit of a utopia.
That's beautiful to hear, though. It's beautiful that, I think if you've been through the education system, my partner's a lecturer, and she discusses this, when you get into the education system, it just takes away that creative side of you. It kind of it depends on where you go to school, I imagine, or what country maybe you go to school, but it seems to just take away that creative side, or sort of teaches you that if you don't fit in this box, then there's nothing you can do. And Estella, how did you find schooling, particularly for the arts?
Like, it's so cool to hear Bratakus is, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but to hear their experience, and just having that exposure to kind of like role models from early on, and like women playing music being the norm. I think that's really great. I kind of went to standard schooling, I guess. Like, you could have like music lessons, and both like within the curriculum and like externally going and like learning a specific instrument and stuff. But obviously, like, I think in school in particular, there's a lot of focus around like going through the grades and like doing the theory and all of that, and kind of like they're quite structured and rigid, and maybe like not quite as creative side of it. Like, I know in, like, I did music GCSE, and I think there is some like composition part of it and stuff. I can't remember, it's a while ago now, but it's not so. It just didn't feel like there was that much room for experimentation, and also often I would end up playing like music that I didn't really like. I mean, like I did do the first couple of grades of rock school, which was quite fun, definitely compared to doing something like piano grades, because they make it like modern and stuff. But it kind of makes you feel like, oh, there's one way to play guitar, like there's one right way, and I need to learn it perfectly, otherwise I won't be able to like play with other people or play in bands and stuff. And like, it took till I think quite a bit later to learn that that's not true. Like, there's so many self-taught musicians and who make really interesting music sometimes because they're not following any particular like sort of standardized structures. So I think that unlearning for me was helpful, and it's another part of why I like girls rock as well, because like, you form a band and play a gig in a week if you attend a girls rock camp, and part of that is just showing like there's no standard you need to meet to be worthy of being on a stage and being heard and having people listen to your music and what you've got to say. So
that's it. It's unlearning. There's a lot of things we have to unlearn from when we leave school, and it's kind of hard. How do you unlearn it if you're not around people that can kind of almost teach you how to unlearn? We know people, or support around you to help you unlearn. I mean, there are things, but you, as humans, I think we learn from being around others and like-minded people like us. And it's so nice to hear that Bratakus have had that from like childhood. I think it's that's a pretty rare situation. And even when I went to school, I wanted to play violin so badly, and my school were like, no, we can't, there's not enough for you to play. So I never got to play. And I'm so like, I love it so much. I hear the violin, it almost makes me cry. But I always think back about how I was told no. That little part of like creativity, it was just a big no. You know, there's not enough. It's almost like hearing you're not enough when you hear there's not enough for you. And yeah, Alison, you know, your schooling, was it a similar occurrence? I know you had quite a strong, you know, feminist mum, so probably, yeah, just do it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know, it's interesting. Yeah, my mom was a total feminist, but she also wasn't very involved in our schooling. I think also because, you know, she was like a lesbian in a small town, and this is back in the 80s, and I think she felt kind of ostracized in a lot of ways at first, and she had to work really hard to start her business. So she really was not involved in our education at all. And she's just lucky that me and my twin sister, Cindy, that we were just total nerds and that we just like studied all the time. And but it had nothing to do with her telling us anything of what to do or encouraging us in any way. But we were lucky to, you know, you live in a small town and sometimes there's more resources in that. It can be. And we had band class in, you know, middle school, high school. So and that was free, you know. And I think I'm trying to think about instrument wise. Well, for especially when I went to bass clarinet, the school provided that instrument. But yeah, most schools only had 1 or 2 bass clarinets. But that's an instrument that no one else wants, and that's kind of why I ended up there, because well, first of all, I wanted to be first chair. So if you're the only one, you're always first chair. Okay, that's telling about my personality. But but also I remember in 5th grade, my teacher kind of gathered a group of students for an after school program that he started that was called the Music Kids, and that's like all one word with a K in the middle, capital K. And we would do kind of like we would just do covers of like Jimmy Buffett and Beatles and Neil Diamond and stuff like that. And we would just kind of perform with jazz hands and matching shirts and stuff and sing these songs. And we would sometimes go to like different care homes and things like that and sing. It was totally ridiculous, but I think it kind of, you know, it was just another musical thing to do. But then I think it's important, something like girls rock, like I think it's really important for people to be able to do these things outside of school, because in the end, or at least I don't know, even though I was a goody goody in school, in the end, school stuff is not cool. Well, I don't know, but I think you need that encouragement and you need that creativity. But at some point, I think you start thinking a lot of things aren't cool. And I remember thinking like, whatever I did in school isn't really that cool. But what you start doing outside of there is super cool. So that's kind of also why I love girls rock, because it builds that kind of self-esteem in young women, young people, through a medium of music. But it's also just really fun and awesome, and it's not mandatory, it's not compulsory. So you kind of feel like you did that, you know, I don't know, you chose to do that.
Yeah, trying to
but I'm not very trained.
No, yeah,
not really.
Trying to force a child to play music is quite, I say force a child, you know, my son plays clarinet, but he's kind of just like, ugh, yeah, don't want to play, just want to do sports. And then trying to get him to know that, you know, in the future you might actually just benefit from even learning to read music and play an instrument, and you can always pick it up again another time. But then I guess there's a lot of cost involved in doing stuff outside of school. And if you're not in an area where there is a place for you to go, I mean, self-learning's okay, but you have to be quite motivated to do that. It can be a very expensive hobby. I could never afford to go to classes when I was a kid, so it was almost kind of like, yeah, it was impossible. All of these extracurricular things were impossible. And again, I don't know if schools would have to have that responsibility, or our governments, or whichever, to kind of nurture the arts and nurture music, because it's a really good way of just releasing a lot of stress and tension and creativity. And I would love to be able to afford for my son to go to music classes like every week. But yeah, the arts are just always underfunded, aren't they? That's a main issue. Something else to talk about maybe one day in the future. But I've got a question from Claire that I want to ask. It's more of a light question. As well as your own bands, do you have one recommendation for an artist or band that is on your repeats at the moment that we should all listen to, or maybe like to listen to? How about Bratakus? What are you listening to at the moment? What do you recommend?
I would say an artist that I think she's extremely underrated is Julie Christmas. She was in the band Made Out of Babies, but she also does solo stuff, and she's got such an amazing, powerful voice and such a range from screaming to kind of ethereal singing, and really she's just really powerful and amazing. Yeah, and you listen to her and it's like, oh my god, how is she not more well known? It's crazy. She's so good, and she does such a variety of music, but it's all, I would say, really driven by like how powerful her voice is. She's great. Definitely we listen to her, like her solo album and in her band, on repeat most days.
Cool. That Julie Christmas, I've not heard of.
Julie Christmas, yeah, and the band's Made Out of Babies.
Made Out of Babies, good name.
Yeah.
Estella, you got anyone or any of you that it's that kind of question, like, you know, it's like asking what your favorite film is, isn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, so I was gonna say, you know, having grown up through, I want to say, the era of pop punk and emo, and them being like heavily like male dominated scenes, I'm really excited about Meet Me at the Altar, who are like a cool new or like relatively new to me POC punk band from the States, like all women of color. They just make really, really great pop punk music, and they're the kind of band I'd have wanted to see when I was like 14, going to like pop punk shows and stuff. And yeah, they just have like great hooks, great singles, and just stand that band.
Meet Me at the Altar. Okay, I'll check that out as well, because that's one I've not heard
with
of.
an sign as well, like,
okay.
Something very throwback about it. I like it.
Bringing it back to the 20th century. Well, taking it back to the 20th century. Surfing the net, AOL, all that kind of stuff. Other internet providers are available. Allison?
This is hard.
Just like, one, just two, just three.
They have to be a current band. So the problem is I'm listening to a lot of old stuff. That's fine. So, I mean, but I guess if you want to talk about bands that are at least more recent than the older stuff I listen to, it's like I love Downtown Boys, and I love French Vanilla, who's a band from here, from LA. But I listen to a lot of Slits, Raincoats, X-Ray Specs. Babes in Toyland was very, very influential to me as well. Kleenex, Lilliput, like I listen to that all the time. Actually influences me a lot with trying to write songs and stuff. I'm not that my stuff sounds like that, I can't, but I try a little bit. I've been listening to Betty Davis a lot, and actually there is a band that I think a lot of people don't know about, who I think is really amazing. You should check out, Matrimony. They were a band from Australia from, I believe, the late 80s, and Kill Rock Stars ended up doing a re-release of their album. I think it's on CD only, but and it's probably digital somewhere. But Matrimony, check it out. It's super awesome. Women, DIY, art, really artsy. I don't know. It's interesting. I really, really love it. So.
See, that was a lot easier than you thought, huh? You're like, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. Oh, here we go. Here's like 20 different bands and singers you should listen to, like straight off.
Well, I was taking notes while the rest were talking. But the thing is I really feel out of touch, though, with really current stuff. And part of that is probably not being able to go to shows for a year. But I don't know.
Yeah, I'm bored of it now. I need to go to gigs. I took them for granted for so long, and now I'm like, oh, I should have gone to more gigs. It was never enough, but I need to go to more gigs. I need to go now. I've been my partner introduced me to a band recently, Black Pumas. I don't know if any of you have heard of them. I think maybe Estella might nodding ahead maybe, but it's fronted by a man of color, but God, his voice, my God, it's like, wow. And he happens to be playing in Glasgow. So Bratakus, you need to go and watch in November if we're allowed to, for sure. But yeah, that just in lockdown, I seem to have, I've been watching a lot of like Tiny Desks and that kind of thing. And yeah, just like, how have I missed all these people? Life kind of gets in the way when it comes to discovering new things. And yeah, being at home, yeah, I found that there's definitely a lot more time to kind of reconnect with music, even if you can't be playing. And I've got another question for you from the audience. What's the future for the women punk scene, and how can we use it for positive advocacy in the future? So, Bratakus, what do you feel like the future for women punk scene is, and how can we use it for positive advocacy in the future?
I mean, that is a big question. Yeah, hopefully we'll just see a lot of positive change. I think something like volunteering for Girls Rock Glasgow has really kind of restored my faith in the kind of women in the music industry and everywhere it's going, because you can see so much positivity and so much kind of life and vibrance in what they're doing,
and how when the girls are given a platform, how amazing we do. It's only a week long, it's 9 days, the rock school, but just like even in that short time, the amazing things they come up with in such a short space of time, when they're just given, like, when people just listen to them and that they're just given a space to do it.
Yeah, and to do whatever music they want to do, say whatever they want to say. So I think hopefully that is kind of building a new generation of like, yeah, passionate young women who are ready to kind of storm the music scene.
Yeah, big boots already, I think, needs to be done. Estella?
Yeah, I would hope that it would continue being somewhere where people feel confident to speak up for the people who are like existing at the margins of society. I think like here in the UK, like with our media landscape, for example, it's like so extremely transphobic at the moment. So things like making sure that our scene remains like a trans inclusive space and an empowering space, and somewhere that everybody feels welcome. Like, I think inclusivity is a term that gets bandied about, but maybe not practiced quite as well as I'd like. So yeah, I think just making sure that nobody's kind of like left behind, like, for example, as well, within this pandemic, like a lot of events have been accessible to a lot more people in ways that they hadn't been before, when we hadn't thought so much about maybe connecting people who can't go to something in person. And so I think it's really important to make sure that we're taking that aspect with us out of lockdown as well. And yeah, just keep kind of like pushing for a progressive scene, I guess.
I would totally like agree with that. You know, in the pandemic, we've been able to have a lot more scope for people to join, but what are we going to do outside of that? And I was speaking to someone who runs a venue in Newcastle, and she was talking about how it's not good enough to kind of give out free tickets. How are people going to get there? You know, think about them traveling in, traveling out. If they're from a rural community, you know, if they don't have much money. So yeah, it's okay to kind of just go, oh yeah, come to the gig, but what provisions are you putting in place to actually make it accessible? And I think that's something that really we need to change, because yeah, poverty is very real, and if we don't change the way that we allow people to enter spaces, how can we have a kind of inclusive diversive space? Inclusive and diverse are words that I just don't feel like I ever want to hear again after this year. You know, and just we need to come up with some new terms or something, because it's just those, you know, those buzzwords that these big organizations use to pretend that they're doing something, but actually they're not doing anything at all. Allison, I don't know what it's like over there, but you know, what do you feel like the future of the punk scene is? And
Well, I mean, I agree with you. I think that there's the importance of kind of DIY spaces and creating accessible and affordable spaces. Or, I mean, I don't know. Everything's so expensive now. I don't know how you do it, but I don't know. Lately, I've been hanging out in an alley, like behind a bookstore, and a lot of people have been gathering there, and that's just been really important, just even for exchanging ideas, you know. But I think just maintaining or creating DIY communities, and kind of uplifting and promoting the things that are important within your community, and giving voice to everyone within the community is really important. And you know, like kind of that whole, you start in your own backyard first, you know, with your activism. But I also believe that most of the music stuff that we're all doing is cultural activism, right? And it's like there's so many different ways to speak out and to resist and to protest and all that, and everyone has their own style and way of doing it, and that's great. We need all of it. There's not just one way, or you shouldn't feel like, oh, I need to be doing this one way. Every bit counts and helps. So yeah, I don't know. And I think you're right. It's like not just speaking about inclusivity, diversity, things like that, but acting it and just being a part of it. Uh and I think girls rock is a great way, like paying it forward. You know, I have volunteered at Girls Rock. I need to get back into it, but I think I felt like I wasn't the best counselor or whatever. So I only want to do it if I feel like I'm useful, but I love the idea of it all, and I think it's really important. And it's also, I wish I had that kind of self-esteem building activity when I was young, and maybe I would have started doing everything earlier, because I didn't really start doing music and stuff until I think 19 or something. I also want to say I forgot a few bands that I wanted to say I thought were great.
Go
Yummy
ahead.
Fur. Okay, Glasgow, Yummy Fur, one of my favorite bands. And I also listen a lot to that. Every song's great. And my friend Nadia Bice, who is living in Brighton, is everything she does is great. So check her out. She's in a band called Snoozers right now. Also, there's a band in LA called Clark and the Himselves. It's really just a single person making all the music, lives in my neighborhood. Really great. Anyways.
You know, I want to go back to something you just said there, actually, about, you know, about girls rock and didn't feel like, you know, you were a good enough counselor. Yeah, about imposter syndrome. You know, I think until International Women's Day, it's probably a good time to talk about that, because, you know, we have a huge, women have, and women and non-binary people probably have a lot of imposter syndrome. It's something that is just in every core of my being anyway. I never feel good enough. I never feel like I'm doing enough. Superwoman complex as well, you know, I want to do everything. I want to fix the world, destroy the world, be the world, etc., etc. So Alison, you know, what makes you think that you're not good enough to do that? And, you know, counseling, saying that I wasn't playing music until I was 19, etc., etc. You know, do you feel like you have imposter syndrome?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, I for sure have it. But well, I don't know. I remember Nadia and I volunteered for the New York Rock Camp a long time ago, and I think we were always getting in trouble. So I think part of the whole rock camp thing is that maybe I have a hard time working within the confines of the rules and stuff like that. So and sometimes I feel like some of the rock camps I've been involved in are great, and I'm so happy they exist. I just don't always feel like I fit in it. Like sometimes the way that it's structured feels a little mainstream to me or something, or the music itself isn't really punk, and then I find that I'm not really able to crawl out of punk. Or like whatever, it doesn't matter. It's great. But I do have imposter syndrome, for sure. And I feel like I have also what we call punk damage, where it's like somehow I always feel like I just make sure I'm paid less than everyone else and do all these things for free, and, you know, don't stick up for myself a lot, and don't necessarily ask for what I actually deserve, or don't fight for it. But I just want to say that even when women and all marginalized people, even when we ask for it, we don't get it most of the time. So I don't want to say it's like just it's our fault because of our self-esteem makes it so that we don't get what we deserve. It's also like it's obviously structural in society. And even when we demand it, we don't get it a lot of the times.
That is true as well. You know, you can demand it, but are you going to get it? And I'm sure we've all experienced that tenfold. Bratakus, you know, what's your imposter syndrome like over there?
I mean, even being asked to do this Q&A, we were like, you want us to do a Q&A with Estella and Allison? What, like, why are we been asked?
Yeah, definitely. I would say we both feel it. And I think, yeah, you just completely, women are really made to feel that. You kind of feel like it's one thing being in a band, but being in a women in a band, it's like you have to work extra hard to prove, oh, I'm a really good musician and I'm good at doing this, I'm a good songwriter, because it's constantly challenged whether you are or not, or constantly judged, like under the magnifying glass, like, is she doing that right? Does she know,
is she only doing this because of this? And yeah.
And you're constantly getting like, at gigs, people are wanting to like show you how to use an amp and everything, and it's like they assume you don't know all of this.
So then
you're
you
treated
feel
like
that
that.
you have to prove that you do deserve to be there, and you do know, when who cares if you don't know? Like, you shouldn't feel that you have to prove yourself at every turn, but then you do feel that.
That is the absolute worst and the bane of my life. People messing with my equipment, trying to talk to me when I'm at work, or just be like, do you want me to carry that? I'm like, no, I'm fine. Or, do you know, I'll teach you how to DJ one day, or I'll teach you how to DJ this kind of music one day. Like, are you for real? Like, I'm at work here. I'm standing here. I'm clearly booked and you're not. So that kind of says something.
Yeah.
Look who's behind the decks and look who's in front of the decks, and I'll tell you who needs the help.
We've had people like showing us how to use our drum machine, and it's like, we programmed that, and then we've been booked to play as a band with a drum machine. We don't really need your help. But thank you.
Oh my god.
And the physicality.
Aaron Smith, our guitarist. Oh, sorry.
No, carry on. No, go.
Oh, in Bratmobile, I just wanted to say, Aaron Smith, our guitarist, she's like been playing music since, like, guitar since she was 13. But at every show, pretty much, she always would get actually not asked, but told what her equipment was exactly. Like, oh, that's a blah blah blah. Like, guys would come up and say that after the show, and actually they were usually wrong. And she'd be like, A, I know what my equipment is. B, you're wrong.
And then you get like, oh, you're a bit aggressive. Oh, you're annoying. Oh, what's wrong with you? You get your periods. Like, really? Like, go away. Now go away. The worst thing for me, I hate, is when people try to ask me if I want things carried for me. Like, mate, I've probably got bigger muscles than you. Like, flit away now. Estella as well, I'm sure this is probably your everyday gig experience, or probably at some point, or someone in Big Joanie has come across someone trying to tell them what to do. But, do you think that feeds into the imposter syndrome as well?
Sometimes, yeah, like, definitely. I think was mentioned earlier, that feeling of like, oh, you have to know everything to be able to prove that, like, you're really good at, like, playing guitar, for example, or like, I really enjoyed learning how to do live sounds at DIY Space, which is like a cooperatively run, like, volunteer run, DIY music venue that we had up until, I guess, last year. But yeah, like, it felt like quite an intimidating sphere to move into, especially like having only really learned to do live sound like at a punk venue, and maybe like not had the same kind of like formalized education background that some other sound engineers have, or that, like, when a band's turning up, like, everyone kind of has that stereotype of the sound guy, and they don't expect it to be like a black woman there behind a desk who's going to tell them what to do, and like maybe not put more in their monitors because they've pushed it too much or whatever. So like, I think definitely in that way I've experienced imposter syndrome, and definitely like seeing the difference in how like my band might be treated turning up to sound check, for example, if there's any men present in the band, or if I'm in a band where there's no cis men present. Like, it's just like a noticeable distinction. Or like, particularly for Big Joanie, when we tour, we have our tour manager Marcus, and like, touring as 4 black punks, like, you can definitely tell that people don't expect to see it and react in a certain way. So yeah, I guess that's kind of a mix of going into a different answer there, but the imposter syndrome there.
It's a visual reaction though, isn't it? And they can't hide it. It's
almost
wide-eyed, or like, oh, like how do I cope with this now? What am I going to do? You know, how do I talk to these people? You know,
and again, like, you know, you're at the venue and they're not sure what you're doing there. You've got like all this gear and like you're on a poster or something. Like,
yeah, Allison, I'm in the band. I'm in the yeah. Yeah, I just want to ask you again, Estella, another question that's come in. Have you found with Girls Rock that more Black and young people of color are more confident in creating punk rock music than when you were younger? And in brackets, I found growing up, punk DIY scenes weren't always a space for me.
It's hard to say, yeah, because I've only volunteered at Girls Rock London, and we're actually based in Hackney. So yeah, people familiar with Hackney will know that there are a number of POC communities in the area, and so we have quite a diverse set of young people who attend our camps, and we also do like 18 plus camps as well. But yeah, in particular, we're drawing from, I guess, young people at schools in Hackney and stuff who come to camp. And I think, yeah, I do think that the youth who come feel like confident about playing like more traditionally like rock instruments like electric guitar or drums or whatever. But I also think it's really exciting seeing how like younger generations really like blend different genres at Girls Rock as well. Like they seem to have like a really fluid kind of like music sources that they draw from and listen to. I guess because like we're in this, you know, internet era now, like post AOL era. So yeah, I don't know if it's just like the wealth of access that they have, but like we use, for example, we use the instruments I mentioned, but also like synth and like a drum pad camp and well, like a sample pad, and that produced like really interesting songs. Like the last year we were able to have camp, I think, is like we're definitely hearing and encouraging as well people to bring in their different influences. So they were mixing like things like punk with like other music they were interested in. Like someone was really into like kind of Spanish guitar music, and then also someone else had this like real like trap influence. So I'm hoping that like we're helping young people to feel like confident in creating that music. And I think we work very hard to make sure that people know that every genre is accepted at Girls Rock, and to also try and like reflect the music that's popular in the area that we're in as well. So making sure that we're like reflecting music that's being made in Hackney today as well.
I really love that idea of like the mixing of punk with like other genres. I want to hear punk trap. That's like I'm going to be research. I've not heard any punk trap before, so this is going to be my wormhole tonight when I'm on like, YouTube, 12 o'clock at night when I should probably be asleep.
That's like the best part about like Girls Rock is like the gig at the end of the week is like everyone writes like a banger, and then we had songs that were just like cycling through genres, but it was like sick, and it's like, yeah, why not do that? So I don't know, I'm very supportive of like kind of what the next gen is going to do with music.
Definitely, we've got like Bratakus in the room, and probably the young representation of like where punk's probably going to go. But Bratakus, I think you were talking earlier as well about you're into a lot of different styles of music as well, apart from just punk. Have you got any plans to kind of start infusing a few more styles into what you do?
Definitely. I mean, I'm just about to release a solo project, which has a lot more different inspirations, a lot of like really old like 50s, 60s music inspiration, and lots of different things. And we also are about as soon as the lockdown allows us, we are about to do a more kind of like harmony based kind of with our friends, like female singing harmony based band. And also I'd like to kind of to try and do something with Bratakus where we maybe infuse more kind of traditional music, traditional Scottish music into the punk as well, to kind of create just different sounds, because I think definitely music is something that should keep evolving and we should keep experimenting with.
Definitely. Who? Sorry, is it Bria that's going to be doing some solo work or no?
Yes, it is. Sorry.
Yeah, I can't see you. I was guessing it was you, but yeah, I just wanted to double check and make sure.
I forget that we're a Black Abyss.
Yeah, a Black Abyss, and then just like it looks like a little speaker just pumping every now when you speak.
I should say, sorry, my solo project is called Hidden Mother, and there are 2 songs on Bandcamp if anyone wants to check it out.
Hidden Mother, did you say?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, I'll have to check that out tonight. Again, on more of my wormhole of music. Yes, I'm interested to hear the Scottish mix of punk. That's going to be some traditional like Scottish music mixed with punk music. I can't even imagine what that would sound like.
Well, hopefully we'll be able to deliver it.
I hope so. I'm sure you'll manage it like easily. Allison, where are some of your favorite places to perform around the world, even? Right?
Yeah, I mean, like venues themselves, or cities, or places. Like,
anything, venues, places in the world, a mixture of the both. Where do you miss? Where do you want to come to or go to when you can?
Anywhere that's far away and that's new and awesome. And I mean, I that's what I love most about being in a band is touring. It's traveling, touring, seeing people, meeting people, and also being on stage and just being able to blab and be loud on stage. A lot of the other stuff in music is not as interesting to me, but that's what I want to do most. I miss obviously traveling anywhere. I love London. I like the UK. I really love touring Europe because you're treated well, you're generally paid well, and you are fed. And I'm a big fan of eating. So
yeah,
and right. And generally European food is way better than American food, and probably tends to be better than a lot of UK food. But yeah, so I miss that. I've never been able to go to Brazil, which I'd love to tour there, or anywhere in South America. I've also never been able to go to parts of North America, like Mexico, which I'd love to tour and play there. I would love to go to Eastern Europe. I mean, I guess I've been able to play in the Czech Republic a bit, which is fun, but I'd love to be able to do that. Also in much of Asia, that would be great, especially Thailand. I would love to play there since I used to live there off and on. I don't know.
Everywhere.
I'm open. Hopefully this is an advertisement. Someone bring me somewhere.
Book me,
please.
Book me.
Australia. I love Australia. I've been there, but I would love to go again.
So all parts of the world, you want to go anywhere,
yeah, please.
Somewhere. Well, actually, you're already in the warmth, aren't you? So you don't need that.
Oh, yeah, but I'm still a baby about it. I still prefer the sunshine. So, but yeah.
I would love that. Some sunshine would be amazing right now. God, muted myself there. Estella, where are you missing? Where would you like to play? Where's your favorite places been?
Yeah, like probably echo the sentiments about touring in Europe. Tend to have like a pretty good time there, and yeah, like quite a sweet rider as well, and like a proper hot dinner before a set. So that's always nice. I really have always enjoyed whenever we've been able to play Paradiso in Amsterdam. It's just like a really fun venue to play.
Yes.
And like I do miss like DIY Space for London, just for the community that I met there, and the things I was able to get involved in, like First Timers, which kind of has a similar ethos to Girls Rock about getting people to start bands. And yeah, it's where I learned to do sounds and like met a lot of people I'm friends with in the punk scene now. So yeah, that's definitely a place I miss, and you know, sad couldn't make it past the pandemic.
I love the Paradiso. I lived in Rotterdam for a while, and yeah, we used to travel to Amsterdam and go and watch gigs. And the Paradiso was where I saw like Jill Scott. I love Jill Scott, and I saw her there. And I saw, I think, so many of the bands that probably don't even exist now. But yeah, it's just an amazing venue, absolutely. And I really like I haven't been to a lot of Europe, but they seem to have a lot of their gigs going on and lots of good venues. Unfortunately, the Northeast doesn't have so many. Well, Newcastle doesn't have so many. Allison's got a hand up there.
Teacher, I just want to say, when Bratmobile played Paradiso, well, we played the upstairs side room or whatever. People were throwing shit at us the whole time. I just want to say that.
Really?
They were throwing coasters at us. It was when we were touring with the Donnas.
Okay.
But just had to put that in there. But also, I want to say that when we toured Europe with the Donnas, okay, this was like late 90s or something, but we would check out in Europe, we would check out the bathrooms. And then if it was a clean, nice space, that meant it was a Donnas night. Like everyone loved the Donnas, all the fans. And if it were like the nastiest bathrooms or squat or whatever, then we knew it was going to be a Bratmobile night.
I like that. That's a good distinction. Actually, when I lived in the Netherlands, it was every man for themselves, a coat, like going to get your coat afterwards. Everyone just turned nasty. It's like a nice gig. And then as soon as it was out, it was like, no hos bars. People climb over you, push you out the way. There was just no rules. Everything was like, go, go, go. I'm sorry to hear that happened to you.
Oh, and shout out to DIY Space for London. I love going there and playing there.
I need to move to London. Well, I don't want to move to London, but yeah, everything happens there. Every
I
good
will say though, like I do miss Glasgow for gigging as well, because whenever we go on tour and like stay in Glasgow, it's always a good night, and there's so many great bands up there as well. So like, fair play, like got to go back to Scotland.
Not been to Glasgow yet. I've not been.
I agree. Yeah,
they get the best we do.
Bratakus can tell us more about it, but I feel very positive about the Glasgow scene.
Yeah,
yeah. You need to say some good things, Bratakus. Do you miss?
And you know you're gonna party, like you know it.
Bratakus, how's Scotland? Where do you like to play?
Glasgow was definitely probably our favourite place to play in Scotland when we could play. There's a really diverse amount of good bands, and the punk scene was not like it wasn't put in a box of like you had to sound a certain way, or you had to look a certain way. You could come just as you are, play the kind of music you were playing, and if you had the right kind of the same ethics and the same political views and everything, then you were just part of the punk scene, which is super cool. And so you discover lots of different bands of different genres and loads of different kinds of people as well, which is great. Do you want to talk about our favourite places to play? Yeah, definitely. One of our best experiences playing was we got a guy who's now a friend of ours invited us to come and play in Gran Canaria, and we were like, we basically found out about it through a friend of ours who'd been already, and this guy he's originally from Spain and now lives in Gran Canaria, and he's like a punk who moved to Gran Canaria and was like, okay, there's no punk gigs here, this is rubbish. So he's basically
I'm going to single-handedly make a punk scene.
Yeah, and he has completely, and he flies bands over, like it must be every couple of months, every month, or well, not anymore obviously, but that is what he did. So he flew us over, and like we stayed in his house. He has a lovely house that's like 5 minutes away from the beach, and he is also a really great chef who's vegan as well. So he cooked us amazing vegan food every day, and
it
then
was kind of like a dream where you were like, "Is this reality?"
Yeah, he took us out. Like he hired a car and took us out sightseeing, and then we played. He got us over. Like last time we went over, we've been over a few times now, just because it's great going over, and he's a friend of ours now. Last time he got us over, we went for 2 weeks, and we went to Tenerife for the first week and played in Tenerife and went sightseeing there, and then we went over to Gran Canaria, played there, and then sightseeing and a lot of relaxing on the beach and things. So that's such a great place to play, because it's like 90% a holiday, 10% actually playing gigs.
And it's just like such a nice change, because usually when you're on tour you don't really get to see any of the places you go to, and like you get to the place you're staying and there's not enough beds, and you realize that there's no food and stuff. So it was just like it was seriously like being in another world.
Yeah, he knows how to look after bands.
But also we got to play in Japan a couple of years ago, and that was such a dream come true as well.
Yeah, that was amazing. Definitely, that's probably two favorite
and also
places.
Scandinavia. I loved playing in Scandinavia. That was so cool. We got to play in this festival called Pintala Festival, and it's in this forest in Finland. It was incredible.
You sound like you've had the best touring experiences ever.
We've had some stinkers as well. We've had a lot of bad as well, yeah.
Japan, though. Japan is like my dream place to go in the world.
Yeah, it's so, and as soon as you're there, there's no mistaking that you're in Japan. Everything is so Japanese and so like amazing.
Yeah, so great.
Okay, I'm going. Next place.
You should.
Sorry, Allison. I can see you hovering there.
I wanted to give a shout out to Sheffield Delicious Clam.
Sheffield Delicious Clam. Okay,
I think that's what it's called, right? That was one of my favorite places to play when Dubai and the Wolves toured in the UK a few years ago.
No, I feel like you get like London, you get Manchester, Sheffield, Leeds, Glasgow. Everything bypasses like in between those places. And I'm like, living in Newcastle, I'm like, where we get some gigs, but like it just seems to be like all the people that I want to see just kind of go Leeds, done, let's move on to Glasgow.
I will say though, like the last UK tour Big Joanie did, I think was November 2019. And we had like such a good time at Newcastle. There's a band up there called Blom. And
people watching will probably know.
Yeah. And I'm trying to remember the cool festival that we played up there as well. But basically, like, I think the first night we were there, we got to like DJ at this like really cool like queer venue after. And then the second night I got taken to like a karaoke place. I think everyone goes, something Joe's maybe. I don't know. It was very busy for a Saturday night and very Newcastle, but basically like the whole experience was great. I think it was my first time there. It's brilliant.
It's fine up here. It just seems to be that we don't get the gigs. I think that's the problem.
I'll petition for it to change because like you're gonna have a good time in Newcastle. People shouldn't be like passing it by.
You always have a good time up here. I think it's more to do with venues. We just don't have the space. It's quite small. But I think it's just a fact of like maybe venues don't get the gigs. We get the smaller gigs for sure. Sometimes, and we've got like really good mid-size venues. Maybe they're just not well known enough. I don't know. But yeah, the Clooney, Cumberland Arms, shout out to all those places. These are the places that get these like cool DIY bands. And Allison, you'll have to come to Newcastle, come play in these little small venues and like come and just, it's the best. And Bratakus, we were so close to getting you here within like.
I know, foiled at the last minute.
No. So close. No, absolutely soon. Maybe we'll have to come up with our own little festival for the.
Yeah.
I just want to say it was Brave Exhibitions Festival that I played in Newcastle, and they put on an amazing show, like showcase of bands. So you should go and follow them if you're interested in like.
Maybe I'll try and
alternative music in Newcastle.
Some Sister Shack / Brave New exhibitions or something like that. Over some programming in there. Be the change, right? Okay, I'm sorry. We haven't got any more time to speak, and I'm annoyed. I wanted to go on for like ever and ever, but yeah, I'm just really conscious of time. I just had so many more questions, and I feel like I'm just in a room full of like really amazing. Well, I am in a room full of amazing women, and this has been like really, really beautiful. But I just want to give you a little bit of time before we close, just to kind of shout out, pick yourself up, give all your hashtags, oh my god, I sound like a grandma. Give all your hashtags, like all the time, stuff the net,
all your TikToks,
styling, etc. Just shout out to everyone, and just Estella. We'll start with you.
Okay. Just like wanted to say a big thanks for even having me on this panel. Like I said at the beginning, I play in Big Joanie and also in Charm Pit. I'm involved in a bunch of things like. If you ever want to ask questions about like Decolonise Fest or Girls Rock, hit me up. Also on the board for the Good Night Out campaign, so shout out to them. And thanks for having me.
Thanks, Estella. Allison, have you got any things you want to say before we go? Shout outs, give you whatever. Go for it.
Yeah. First of all, I want to say hi to Selena from Manchester, who I know posed a question that didn't get to be answered, but I thought it was a really great one. But it's not directed at me, but anyways, I just want to say hi because you're one of my favorite people. And then I recently put out a record. since I'm sitting next to my records, Cliquey Bitches with Alice Bag and Seth Bogart. Anyway, so that's a kind of recent thing I've done. It's not really a current band. Well, we're not functional really, but anyways, there's a record. And I started working with these guys, and we're doing this thing called Magic Witch Cookbox. They're amazing musicians. Joey Karam, who is from the Locust and LeShock, and Cody Willis, who's from Murder City Devils and Big Business Melvins. Anyway, so that's in the works slowly. They've done a lot. I'm still writing my parts. I don't know. Like, I think things are maybe starting to look up. Yeah, I'm in the band, up and going again. Hopefully, I'm sitting on like 4 or 5 interviews. So like, Viv Albertine and Mecca Normal, Victoria from Downtown Boys, all that should be coming up. Also, I'm going to start working on another podcast that's about the Olympia music scene. I'll be co-producing, and a history of the Olympia music scene and the International Pop Underground Convention Festival from 1991 summer. So
amazing. Get it done. More podcasts,
yeah.
More podcasts, and lots more music, please.
Oh, thanks. It's been hard during the pandemic. It's just been hard to get motivated.
Motivation. It's just surviving at the moment, I think, is the main thing that we can do, and just keep our mental health and just look after ourselves. And everything else can come afterwards. Got to look after ourselves first, right? And Bratakus, any like shout outs or social medias or anything like that?
Well, you can find us on Facebook and on Instagram. We're really, really bad at keeping it updated, but we are there. We're working on our new album right now, and we might have a single. Yeah, we're about to release a single called Real Men Eat Meat. That'll be out soon. And as I said, also I'm working on my solo project, Hidden Mother, so you can check that out as well. And we are also working on a vegan cooking zine, Brats in the Kitchen. So we've got all that going on. And you can see, we will update our social media eventually. Yeah. And we'll put everything up once we do it. Mm-hmm.
Almost with the foraging.
Yeah. We have to fit in quite a lot of foraging in between all of that as well. The snow is only just melted here, so there's not much foraging we can be doing right now, unfortunately. Yeah, we have to everything. Even like with planting a garden, it's like so much later than when everyone else is doing it because we live so high up. Like even our friend who only lives like 40 minutes away, her garden, she can plant her garden. It comes up so much quicker than when ours comes up. Yeah, that's what happens when you live on a hill. Yes. But thank you so much for having us. It's been great. We're honoured that you asked us to take part. Yes, definitely.
It's been lush. That's all I can say, really. My favourite words is moving to the northeast. Just everything's lush. It's great. Like, it's just been so nice to be in a virtual room with you all. Yeah, I just think we've had some really good conversation, and I'm just really like proud to be around sisters. Just absolutely emotional. I've been really nervous today and like really anxious, and I think it's mainly because it's like people that I really respect and look up to, and I think that it was really well timed to have you all come and just chat and connect, and I just want us all to keep in touch, and just like one day maybe we'll do this again, but in real life this time. That'd be really awesome. But I just want to say thank you to everyone in the audience as well, and you'll be able to watch this again. We're going to post it on YouTube. It's going to be available again on Facebook to watch. And this is pretty much the end of the Sister Shack events. We've got our 2 artist spotlights on our website. If you go to Sister Shack or sister-shack.com, and you can see 2 artists that we're can't speak. Sorry, brain's gone. Blur. We've got 2 artists on our website. Go and have a look. They're amazing, and you can look at their artworks. Maybe go and buy some artworks as well. But just thank you to Steve as well, who's done our tech today. It's really appreciated, and I'm just really thankful to have so many people in the Northeast that are willing to support and beyond Sister Shack. And thank you very much, everyone that's tuned in, and everyone who's going to be watching again. Thank you so much as well. And if you want to support Sister Shack a bit more, you can go to our website and buy us a virtual coffee, and that will help us sort of pay for our events in the future. And hopefully we'll be back soon doing live events again, because I really miss them. And yeah, I miss having that human connection. I'm sure we all do. But thank you to Estella and to Allison, who I think might want to say something again before we go.
Oh my God. I'm sorry. I need the real coffee. But anyways, because I haven't woken up yet. But I just want to say thank you, because you're really amazing and doing amazing things, and you've really inspired me. And also to Estella, as you know, Big Joanie's like one of the bands that I should have mentioned, because totally awesome. And they're current. Also, Bratakus, I'm excited to get to know more about your music and everything. So I just want to say thank you to all of you. That's all.
Thank you. Yeah, get to know Bratakus. They are loud and they are here, and they're awesome. And it kind of, seeing them on Girls Rock, the documentary, it kind of ignited my old rock self, that part of me that I think I kind of like pushed away, or you know, whatever happened, or my 90s R&B queenness came back out. But yeah, seeing Bratakus, I was just like, whoa, yeah, definitely I just need to hear everything about them like straight away. So yeah, it's so nice to see like I'm saying, sound like a grandma again, but like, you know, the younger generation like really coming up and like changing some things and doing some things. And yeah, all of us just learning from each other is like really important and essential. But again, just thank you all. It's been wonderful. And I hope that you Allison, have a nice day. Estella and Bratakus, have a nice what's left of the evening. And yeah, thank you again to Steve. So goodbye to everyone.
Bye.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks so much.